I heard about this story yesterday for the first time. I got an update about it 24 hours later, like right before I came on air tonight. And this is why I think I want to start with this story because it's really disturbing what it's all about. And I'm going to share with you um what this involves. Here's the person in question. I will say this has a tragic ending. You've been warned about it. It involves this fellow over here. His name is Bubba Copeland. And basically, Bubba over here, he is a mayor in a city called Smith's Station, Alabama. He also has another job where he serves as pastor. He is pastor of First Baptist Church in a place called Phenix City, Alabama, nearby. So, for several years now, the past 8 years, this guy has held this dual role as a mayor and a pastor of a Baptist church, fairly conservative, rural community. So, right off the bat, you probably have some stereotypes about who he is, what he believes, the sort of people in his community, the sort of people in his church. And I'd never heard of the guy, but I will tell you a little bit about what he is, I guess, known for. One of the things you could see here on this website, he served on the Lee County Board of Education for 11 years before becoming mayor. In addition to serving as mayor, he owns a small business. He pastors at the church. Okay, fine. There's actually a photo on Facebook. Let me share this with you. This is he posted this in 2020. So this is during the pandemic, but I think this picture is from a year before because there was like a hurricane or something that hit his small town in Alabama. And so one of the things, I'm just going to show you the picture first. You can see he has a photo op with Donald Trump, who came by to talk to him about, whatever presidents do when a natural disaster hits a community. And what he said in that thing, never in a million years did I think my first term as mayor would include dealing with a deadly tornado. Well, sorry, it was tornado, not a hurricane, global pandemic, and several student suicides. There's no instruction manual for this job. However, I do have my own personal manual, and that is my Bible. God will sustain you through anything as long as you commit your life to Him. Okay, think of that what you will, but it's I still, when I read all that stuff, my first thought, I will freely admit, is okay, I feel like I already know this guy, right? Small town mayor, rural mayor, guy who is apparently proud of his photo op with Donald Trump, a guy who talks about God freely because he's a pastor, but he also talks about it as a mayor that God will guide you through anything. And that's why when I saw this guy's name in the news earlier this week, uh, I kind of felt a little bit of Schadenfreude because this is the headline that appeared in a website called 1819 News. Check this out. This is the headline. The Secret Life of Smith's Station Mayor and Baptist Pastor F.L. Bubba Copeland as a transgender curvy girl. Apparently, it's a hobby I do to relieve stress. And they include this picture of the mayor on the left and his online alter ego on the right. I'm just going to leave this up there. By the way, 1819 is a reference to when Alabama entered the Union. But what you should know about this website is it's basically, as far as I could tell, a right wing media outlet that happened to produce, they produced this story. So the story that they're giving here, I'm not going to show you all the pictures that involve this guy. But the story that they say is that he poses as a transitioning transgender curvy girl on social media outlets. He has an online persona named Brittany, and Brittany is who he dresses up with. He would post images on Instagram, on Reddit. They weren't exactly like nude photos or anything like that. Some of them were a little bit racy. but whatever. Like, that's what the guy does in his free time. And he was apparently doing this for a number of years. The reporter, Craig Monger, got a lot of screenshots of what Copeland posted on Instagram and read it. He also got a hold of fictional erotica that Copeland had written also under that pseudonym and posted on another website. And the thing is, of course, you don't expect any of this to happen with a Baptist preacher. Of course, that seems hypocritical because if there's one thing about, Baptist preachers is that they really don't like LGBTQ people. And of course, you would think they don't like trans people. And cross dressing is a sin, and so that's where I think the story was going. It was saying, we caught this guy doing this stuff online. We have all the proof of it. And it turns out he doesn't exactly deny it either. According to that article, I will show you one little bit of it. After collecting all this stuff, all this information, they finally confronted him about it. And here is that exchange right here. Let me show you. Here you go. This is from 1819 News, again, right wing website. During an interview with 1819 News, Copeland confirmed that he operated the account and was featured in the pictures. He claimed it was only a means of getting rid of stress and called the postings a hobby and a fantasy. He also said his erotica was purely fiction. After the interview, Copeland promptly deleted the accounts and asked them not to be made public due to his family and position as a pastor. Copeland initially denied having any knowledge of the accounts, but when he was made aware of the social media evidence, like the screenshots and all that, he quickly admitted to running the page. He also said that his wife was aware of his activity, but no one else in the community. Copeland told 1819 News, dressing up as a woman has been a hobby since youth as a release from anxiety. So again, you can understand why this outlet wanted to out him, because that sure seems hypocritical. And again, I want to stress that was my first reaction too when I saw it. My first reaction was like, hell yeah, go get him, bring him down. And by the way, I saw this article cited on a couple other news outlets as of last night, saying we're going to reproduce that article or we're going to write our own, just pointing people to it, because oh boy, that seems very titillating, right? So that's why people were interested in this story. Now, just to be clear, he is not actually a trans woman. It's not like he's hiding it and doing this stuff online was his way of doing it like secretly. Like, no, he's not trans at all. That's just the character he created. He does apparently like cross dressing, but like, whatever, I don't care. He said he's playing that character because it's an escape from his normal life. I'm sure, I would imagine it's kind of an ego boost for this guy who says elsewhere in the article, like, I'm not necessarily an attractive man, but when he dresses up like this persona, this woman, he feels sexy. And I'm sure there was some sort of ego boost that comes when you post pictures of yourself as this woman, this curvy woman that he's trying to portray, and he gets positive feedback on places where you can upvote pictures and people are telling you how attractive you are. I'm sure that was part of the thrill for him. But clearly he was embarrassed that he got caught. I don't know that his wife actually knew about any of this. Frankly, it's none of my business. It's his business. But I do understand why he really wanted to keep this side of him a secret. So on Wednesday night, a couple nights ago, shortly after this article started making some rounds, he had church service that night. And I'm not going to play the whole thing for you, but he did deliver a short sermon where he basically said he was the victim of an internet attack. And I'm going to read to you a little bit of what he said. He said in the sermon, I have been an object of an internet attack. Let me share this with you here so you can see this. Let me move this up here. An article that was written about my capacity as the mayor and capacity as a pastor. This article is not who or what I am. Yes, I have taken pictures with my wife in the privacy of our home in an attempt of humor, because I know I'm not a handsome man nor a beautiful woman either. I apologize for any embarrassment caused by my private personal life that has uh, become public, basically. He says, "This will not cause my life to change. This will not waver my devotion to my family, to serving my city, and to serving my church. I'm thankful for the grace of God and the willingness to forgive. I have nothing to be ashamed of." He also says a lot of the things that were said were taken out of context. And in conclusion, I love my family. They're number one. And again, I'm sorry for what my actions have caused. And I'm thankful for the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that have reached out to me today. So this is the sermon he gave on Wednesday night. Clearly in a state of panic, I would imagine, because I mean, listen, I don't care necessarily what people do in their private life, but to have that go public, I mean, that's between him and his family, man. That's not necessarily the rest of our business, unless he is like another Ted Haggard. If that's the case, if this is a guy who spends all of his time trashing trans people, denying trans identities, bashing LGBTQ people, then I think this is fair game. So this is where, and by the way, I should add one more thing, that after this aired, I saw this as well. This is from the Alabama Baptist State Convention and Alabama Baptist State Board of Missions. They issued a statement in response to all this. "We have become aware of the alleged unbiblical behavior related to the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Phenix City. We are praying for the leaders of the church family as they seek to determine the truth concerning these accusations. As the people of God, we pray for the pastor and his family as well. We are in consultation with the Russell Baptist Association's leadership as they endeavor to assist the First Baptist family during this critical time of need." Okay, and it's signed by a bunch of dudes who run that thing. Okay, so this is where we were at a couple of days ago. Like, that statement, by the way, is a little weird because they're like, we need to do a determination. Let's determine the truth of this unbiblical behavior. I'm not sure what determination they need because Copeland already admitted to doing all of that. But I did find it weird. They didn't say Copeland should be kicked out of his church, even if he did do it. They also didn't specify what unbiblical behavior he did. Was it pretending to be a trans woman? Was it dressing in drag? Was it the fact that all of this was a secret? There was actually in the 1819 news article, they mentioned the Alabama Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, and that's a larger group of which Copeland's church is a member. They didn't specify a punishment either. They said this would appear to be a matter between pastor and church. And so this is where I was at a couple of nights ago, or last night, I should say, after this all came to my attention, because it sounded weird to me. Again, if he's a hypocrite, screw the guy, right? But it was a little weird that all these Baptist groups were like, this seems kind of bad, but this is their problem. They need to figure it out. His church needs to figure it out, which seemed rather mild. And this is where me and the article started parting ways there, because as much as I want to join the pile-on, the thing that struck me as weird about all of this is that the entire article in 1819 News did not mention, they did not have clips, they did not have screenshots of examples of this guy being anti-LGBTQ. You would think in an article, let's say we're talking about Ted Haggard or we're talking about Jerry Falwell Jr., and you wanted to point out his hypocrisy. You would say, oh, this is what he does in his private life, according to the pool boy or according to the male escort that Ted Haggard hired. And this is what these men said from the pulpit or online on social media. And you can see the hypocrisy. In the case of Bubba Copeland, in the article in 1819 News, there was none of that. They didn't include a single example of him being anti-trans, anti-gay, or even really examples of him being ultra-conservative. And to me, that seemed like a red flag because that would be very prominent in any other news outlet's article about such a thing. And I thought, again, initially my thought is if it's a Baptist preacher, drag queens have been under attack by conservatives. They've been called groomers. They've been attacked just for reading books to kids. There are laws that have been passed in red states to ban drag performances. Trans people obviously have been subject to vicious attacks, mostly by religious conservatives, but also some atheists too who are anti-trans. These are people who don't accept their identities, don't want to use their pronouns. So, if a Baptist preacher is a hypocrite, then screw it, expose it. But as far as I can tell, where's all the evidence that this guy's a hypocrite? So I began to look. Yesterday, I went through his church's social media. I went through the guy's social media. I went through newspaper articles when he was running for office, anything I could find about the dude, because I was looking for evidence that he basically does fire and brimstone sermons. I couldn't find it. I couldn't find anything. I searched by words. I looked through what I thought might be sermons that are potentially bad. I could not find anything. Now, it's possible that stuff exists. Haven't found anything yet. I couldn't even find a policy that he has passed as mayor that would make the lives of LGBTQ people worse. Maybe it has happened. I couldn't find it. So that seemed like a major red flag. Like, why didn't they mention any of this? And if there's no proof of hypocrisy, then why the hell is this a story? And I want you to think about that because I'm glancing at some of these comments and I think a lot of you are where I was, which is to say, yeah, expose the guy, call him out. But let's say for a moment, this guy is like a progressive Baptist. Let's say he's a Baptist who's not anti-LGBTQ. If that's the case, why would anyone care? Why should anyone care what he does in his spare time? Because as far as I can see, even with his online, I'm a curvy trans woman persona, who's he hurting? Nobody. He's indulging in fantasy in anonymous forums. Like, it's not like he's doing anything to kids. It's not like there's any evidence of like infidelity or anything like that. He's just having some fun. What would be the harm if there's no hypocrisy? To me, it felt very much like that article in 1819 News was just an excuse to say, look at this dude dressing up as a woman, look at this dude dressing in drag, and let's make fun of him for doing it because that's weird. I think that's all the article was. I mean, it's a true story. He was actually doing it, but I question the news value of that story because if you're not exposing hypocrisy, then what is the point of that? People have secret lives. A lot of people, even in prominent positions, if they're elected officials or if they're famous in any way, they do things in private they don't want the public to know about. And as long as they're not hurting other people, I don't know why it should be any of our business. And even if they are hurting like other people, maybe it's between him and his family. Maybe in his case, maybe it's between him and his God. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's our problem. So, is his hobby salacious? Maybe, sure, but it shouldn't concern any of us unless he spends his time in the pulpit and in the government talking about why drag and trans people are supposedly evil. So, I could not find any proof that this guy is another Ted Haggard or Jerry Falwell Jr. He's just a dude who likes to dress up as a woman and write out his fantasies for fun. It may not be your idea of a good time, but also it's none of your damn business. And then when I started to look even more, I found even more reason to think I don't think he's one of the bad ones at all. And let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to show you this picture on Facebook. This is posted by his church. Check this out. First Baptist Church, all are welcome here. And that's a sign that was on the church sign. But the thing is, a lot of churches, evangelical ones especially, love to do this game, this bait and switch thing where they say, yeah, we welcome everybody here. We're very inclusive. And then you become a member of the church. And only when you get into the weeds do you realize, oh, there should have been like a giant asterisk next to that message. Because, of course, they don't really accept trans people. Or if you're gay and in a same sex relationship, they don't really accept that. But in this case, check out the comment here from one person. Are y'all an affirming church? And there's no response to this. It's 7 years ago. There's no response to this, but there is a thumbs up. And who gave a like to that particular question? Well, look at this. It's First Baptist Church of Phenix City. It's like the church approved that question, which makes me think, yeah, they really are affirming. Maybe I'm wrong, but that seems interesting to say the least. And then it gets even weirder because I mentioned earlier he's part of an organization called the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. Well, here's an article from the Orlando Sentinel a couple of years ago, 20 years ago. It's a while ago. And it was basically saying, hey, there's a giant meeting of the Southern Baptists, which everyone knows about because they're super conservative, largest Protestant denomination in the country. But in fact, there are two Baptist organizations. And if you scroll down here, they're talking about the one Copeland's church belongs to, the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. And I know this is word salad here on this page, but CBF members prefer the image of a wall of separation between church and state. CBF members are both conservative Democrats and moderate Republicans. They oppose state-written school prayer and believe the posting of the Ten Commandments on public buildings violates the First Amendment. Well, that's interesting. They sound progressive. This is another thing later on. The CBF has neither creed nor confession. Its theological boundaries are less fixed and more fluid. The organization's code words are priesthood of believers, local church autonomy, and religious liberty. So it sounds very much like this dude was not running like a Southern Baptist church where the hypocrisy would be obvious, because I could point to the policies the Southern Baptists believe in and say, look at what they said here. This dude belongs to it. Doesn't sound like it. Sounds like he's part of a relatively progressive Baptist organization, at least like politically centrist at best. But they're relatively progressive, and they don't have any set of rules or creeds that they attest to. It's kind of whatever the churches decide for themselves. And then it makes more sense why all those Baptist organizations in the 1819 news article said, well, it's up to the church how they want to handle this. Because, of course, it's not a top-down organization. So that's interesting. And it's weird that First Baptist Church's Facebook page, you won't find anything that's anti-LGBTQ or anti-drag. They don't really talk about that stuff at all. I mean, they're not exactly affirming, but they're not against it either. They really just focus on the Jesus stuff. And I think if they're connected to larger conservative Baptist groups at all, it's to take advantage of other programs like missionary trips, or maybe vacation Bible school over the summer. Like, what do we teach the kids? But I'm just not seeing evidence of right-wing propaganda. So I go back to the question, why are we bothering this dude for dressing up in drag and having some fun in his free time? Like, it's possible he's a hypocrite, and I haven't seen the evidence. But again, he's not Lauren Boebert saying one thing about, what people do in their bedroom and then playing with a dude during a musical in the audience in what she thinks is a dark room. That's hypocrisy. Call out political hypocrisy or religious hypocrisy all you want. But again, I go back to that picture of him with Trump. He wasn't praising Trump. He's just saying, man, can you believe me, a small town mayor, met the president because I had to deal with this big issue? That's not that bad, to be honest. So that's where I was. as of yesterday. I wrote a whole article about why I don't think it's fair to go after this guy for what they said he did. And I was bothered by it. I wish I could have talked to the dude, um, and all that, because I just felt like it all just seemed very unfair. And then right before I started taping this tonight, I'm going to share this with you. Again, I apologize. It's really sad information. This is the headline I just caught before we went live tonight. It looks like Bubba Copeland has taken his own life. They found his body, I guess, earlier tonight. They did not say a cause of death in anything I read. But it seems like it's a fluid story. They're just trying to figure it out as we speak. If you look at this article, the sheriff only said he committed suicide the evening of November 3rd. That's today. But it did not give any details on how he died. And I'm not going to dwell on this particular article, but let's say all of that is how this story ends. Then I go back to the takeaway then is that a right-wing news outlet, a right-wing media outlet outed a guy for no reason other than he does a hobby they probably think is immoral, impure, whatever the right-wing site wants to call it. But the mayor didn't do anything wrong. You may not enjoy it. You may not think it's an interesting hobby. You may find it weird. It doesn't matter. But if they outed him against his will, obviously, if they exposed this secret for no reason other than they didn't like what that secret was, even though he wasn't hurting anybody, then it seems like that news outlet, the media outlet, and the people who were passing this stuff along, mocking this guy, acting like he was a hypocrite when there is no evidence of his hypocrisy that I have seen yet. I feel like that 1819 News and the reporter, I want to say they deserve responsibility for it. I think that may be taking it too far, but like they need to do some soul searching about what is their purpose. What were they trying to accomplish by ruining this guy's life, by exposing the secret that wasn't hurting anybody, that wasn't evidence that he's a liar. He just did something for fun in his spare time. And that's what bothered me last night. And obviously, with this ending, with this depressing ending, it's even worse. And I feel like we haven't heard the last of this story because a lot of people are now going to have to rethink how they frame that story and how they talked about it. Several years ago, little side tangent, the website Gawker, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, the website Gawker published a story about the brother of an Obama administration official who was basically caught up meeting someone on Grindr or hiring an escort who was male or something like that. And obviously that was a secret he wanted to keep from his family. And they published a story outing that guy. And again, you go back to the question, if you look that story up online, a lot of the commentary is, who cares? Why are you publishing this story? Because if the issue is infidelity, that happens with a lot of people. If the issue is hypocrisy, maybe there would be value, but that guy's not in the government. So what was the point of that story? And the criticism was so loud that Gawker itself, the people running the site at the time, said, you know what? All of you are right. We had no reason to publish that story. It felt sleazy and it felt like clickbait, so they did it. But then they pulled it down. And that's the thing. If there's no news interest to the story, then why are you doing it? It doesn't matter. By the way, I've had people tell me, like, oh, I found something secret about some atheist who might be famous. And usually my response is, why should I care? Unless there is some reason this matters to strangers, to the public, it's none of my business. There are also people, I know you've all seen this jokingly, if a pastor says something awful online, the response is always like, oh, I wonder where his Grinder profile is, or I wonder what his search history looks like. Interesting question, because again, the thinking is if it's hypocrisy, then this dude needs to be exposed. But if there's no hypocrisy and there's no evidence of Bubba Copeland's hypocrisy, then what they did to the guy to drive him to the worst kind of desperation today, that people need to rethink how they are doing these things. Just because he's a believer doesn't mean he's a bad guy. Just because he's a pastor or a conservative mayor, by the way, which is very different than someone who writes state laws, federal laws. Like, I don't know why that is justification to do to him what this news outlet did to him. Anyway, that I'm going to be thinking about this for a while now because of how disturbing that story is, but it troubled me. The fact that it ended this way, I hope bothers everybody, and I hope it makes you all and I don't say this in an accusatory way. I hope it makes all of you watching this rethink how you think about these things, because just because someone is a pastor doesn't mean that everything they do that seems liberal, that seems uh sex positive, I don't know if that's the right word, like, it doesn't mean it's hypocrisy, it doesn't mean it's wrong. And I have not seen more people calling out the original website that published that article about him, partly because the news hasn't made the rounds yet. It will, but also because I don't think they felt that the news site was doing anything wrong. And I really do think they were.